oh God, you're going to get spending insights, color-coded categories. And everyone in Europe is like, what? This is not news.
do you know what? I was sitting with Jason Bates at the time, and he was like, yeah, like it's the only time I felt smarter than Johnny Ive, you know, which is good. Guys, let's get on with the news. First up, we have, I think, the story of this week, both positive and many mocking of, is that Apple Card launches for everybody. Now a credit card is as private as cash, apparently. So this is over on Forbes. Apple Card has finally launched, and as we know, it's a credit card with Goldman Sachs and processed by MasterCard. It has no fees that they're talking about, at least, and is intended to be used primarily without its physical card. I mean, the physical card, turns out it's not meant to be used with lots of different things, isn't it? But I imagine we'll be sort of coming to that shortly. Apple doesn't know where you shop, they're saying this, but actually I know they're going to be sort of passing on and trying to work very closely with Goldman Sachs to provide that data up. What do you think, guys? Like, fancy card, good app? Who wants one of these?
Well, I think I was quite interested because everyone in my sort of sphere of understanding what cards they have has a BA Amex card, and that's been very much the card that everyone has. But this is the first time that I really looked at something and I thought, my rewards are really falling with BA, and actually 2% on everything I spend on my business account, it could end up being quite meaningful. I was a bit annoyed with the no fees, though, because there is an APR and they didn't make that obvious. And I think it's between 13 and 24, something like that. And I think they shouldn't have gone with the strong no fees when that's sitting underneath it.
Yeah, it's fundamentally not true, isn't it? Which, if you're going to put it in your advertisement as no fees and then there are actually fees, it seems like a bit of a, maybe mis-selling hasn't quite come to technology companies, has it? But we'll see where they get to.
And also on the no fees, I think they said that they won't charge you a minimum payment each month like traditional credit cards. But if they've got no minimum and they've got the APR, that could end up with people ending up with quite big balances that they're not expecting. So
agree. What do you think, Marko? Fancy metal card? Do you want one of those?
Definitely not. Not because of the metal card, but because it's Apple. So that's. But this is a little game we have on between the two of us. But I'm fully agreeing here. The point is, if they're not being straight when it comes to the costs, how straight are they being about the information they're using? So I wouldn't believe that Apple is in this just because of making some money. I think they're in that because there is something more for them in the long run, and this has to be based on data. So I'm quite skeptical when it comes to no data, no fees, and with the fees we have seen, there is some.
Yeah, I think, they've sort of come out, I think with a little bit of digging, you can see that, payments right now is about 1% of their overall revenue total, but essentially getting them into a place where, the card is a nice novelty, but that's not why they're doing this. They're essentially doing it so you use Apple Pay a lot more. And the one thing that, Apple does love is like a walled garden ecosystem to a certain degree. So, the harder and harder drugs that they can get you on, if it's not aluminium, it's titanium, right? So getting you sort of deeper and deeper into that walled garden. I'm saying all this with Apple stuff all around me, though. So I am definitely going to have one of these.
It's really pretty, but the interesting bit for me is actually the daily cash. It's the one bit no one's concentrating on. It's a green dot card. So you're actually signing up to a Goldman's credit card and a green dot prepaid card.
Yeah.
So you get cash back.
Advertising insanely a large amount over in the US right now.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, in between watching Fox News for fun, I was seeing lots of green dot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Light entertainment on Fox News.
It's kind of interesting because you get the cash piece and then you start spending the cash, and then one day they say, why don't you just load up the cash piece, and then they kind of own you, and it's really clean and tidy. I worry a lot more about also, like, they've gone live and already a couple of people are having trouble with customer support and things have gone wrong. So I think they might have done all the nice plumbing stuff, all the pretty bits, but maybe the reality, and no one will care that if it's gone wrong with Green Dot or it's gone wrong with Goldman's or someone wasn't there at the right time. It's just Apple screwed up.
Yeah.
So I think there'll be a lot of that over the next few weeks.
It's going to be, I think, both.
Which is from my old CEO background. I'm just thinking, on the other end, it's really pretty.
Yeah.
So
Is it?
I think I think the app's, like, they've taken the best in class. The card is silly. It doesn't work with denim and leather, apparently.
Yeah. You need a special microfiber cloth to keep it clean. Right. But I think that's mainly because it's also white, which is just a bad choice if you're thinking about something you're going to be using all the time. Anybody who's ever had a white phone case will know, it's not a good colour to choose. So style over substance is definitely winning there. But metal cards are definitely a thing in the UK. A lot of our challenger banks have them, and nobody's complained about not being able to put it next to their other cards or getting it scratched or denim dyeing it a different colour. So maybe Apple will figure that out and it won't be as funny as it is now in like 5 months' time.
I mean, me and Marko just came from a meeting with Simon, and he said they'll offer some sort of £400 adapter to keep it clean or something along those lines. You know, so maybe like a particular rubberized case or something. But I mean, I've had a play with the app. I've held one of the cards. I didn't want one until I did that. And that actually, I find that with almost every Apple product, if I'm honest with you. I'm like, I'm not going to buy a new iPad. I've touched a new iPad. Now I desire a new iPad more than anything on the world. So it's a strange thing that they're very good at doing, is taking something as boring as a credit card and making it desirable. Like, that is just an amazing thing.
May I weigh in here? This is 5 years ago, I would completely agree with you. Today, that was, 10 years ago or 5 years? I don't know, when the first iPad came out. I bought the case for the iPad before I got the iPad. So I was really crazy about the product getting to me.
You bought the case before you got the...
Yeah, really.
You're just sitting there at the door waiting.
It needed to be protected before I even got it, right? So at this time, it was aspirational. It was really... everybody was going crazy about it because of the design and stuff like that. Today, to be really honest, the only thing what I like about Apple still is the operational system. Otherwise, I would switch immediately to a Samsung or a Huawei, whatever. The hardware has become much better when it comes to the phones. I just like the iOS much better. So this has changed, and that's why, from my perspective, they are on a train where things are going in a direction where this excitement is not there anymore.
Yeah. But they can do the kind of bells and whistles stuff. So I've seen how you load it up into your Apple Pay. Yeah. Your letter arrives and there's I assume an NFC chip or something, and you do that.
Yeah, but it's not on the card, is it? And that's the problem.
Is it not on the card?
No, the NFC chip is not on the card. There's no NFC chip.
It's on the package. So it's actually part of the packaging to register it between the phone and the card. So it's smart how they've created the packaging, and again they're sort of creating an experience around that, aren't they? They've
got the unboxing right, which is what they always get right, and then everybody else will want to have that unboxing experience for everyone else's card, so they can always keep making it exciting. But that's what they always do. The design's wrong, because they always get design wrong. I
think it's encapsulated in the tagline for the entire product, and that it's created by Apple, not a bank, and that's really all they care about. So even though Goldman Sachs is kind of running this whole thing behind the scenes, Apple's name is all over it, and they've had to do things like give the card 3 separate card numbers just so that they can maintain this idea of not having a card number on the card, for example, and encouraging you to use it through Apple Pay because that's where they're going to make all their money, through interchange fees. So it's definitely got Apple's name, and I mean, I don't know how long this was, but Joni Ive baby all over it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I did enjoy the initial sort of reveal of this one, where Joni Ive was talking about reinventing financial services and how banking has been broken and I was like, it just looks like European fintech, mate, doesn't it? So I'm not sure if that necessarily led to him leaving Apple, but it probably should have done.
That was one of the hilarious things, actually, when they first started to reveal a bit more about the card. It was like, oh God, you're going to get spending insights, color-coded categories, and everyone in Europe is like, what? This is not news.
Do you know what? I was sitting with Jason Bates at the time, and he was like, yeah, like, it's the only time I felt smarter than Joni Ive, you know, and which was good.
I do think there will, though, be a stumbling block, just because the US is not contactless friendly yet. And if you're trying to convince people to use Apple Pay in places they can't use Apple Pay, well, then immediately customers are going to be like, well, I've got this new product and you're promising me great cash back, but I can't actually use it anywhere. So what use is it?
And paying it off takes 7 days, apparently, still. So you have to go to the underlying that came out as well.
But there's a big risk for Apple in that, because when you just look at what Apple has done before with their control freakishness about their products, so that they wanted to control everything of what their products are about. Now, only a small part of the thing, especially the name, is only Apple. The rest is in the design, maybe, but the rest is somebody else, where the whole customer experience might go quite wrong. And as you said before, this and this comes back to Apple. Nobody is then saying this is Goldman or this is somebody else. It is, at the end of the day, it's an Apple card, and when something goes wrong, it will always come down to Apple. So I think that we see a seismic shift here in how they look at products.
At Penta, people care if Penta goes wrong. They don't care about like the underlying suppliers.
Exactly.
And I've just done that for 3
Absolutely.
years of my life. I can tell you that for free. So if Apple has the same problems, no one will care. It'll be Apple that's trouble.
The role of Goldman here is interesting, though, because I think we've all got experience of big banks and how siloed that they can operate. But if Goldman behind the scenes are merging Apple credit card data with Marcus data, suddenly you've got like high interest savings with credit card data, and then it's not that much of a leap into something like longer term investments. And so I think that's quite an interesting play from Goldman Sachs, but not much publicity for them, really.
Yeah, but they're not using the data.
They're not selling the data. They didn't say they're not using it.
Good.
So essentially, this is the benefit of the Marcus platform. Essentially, you know, it says Goldman Sachs in the same way as Marcus is Goldman Sachs, but this is essentially the Marcus platform being exposed through a JV with somebody else. I think the really interesting thing to your point around branding. I mean, credit cards lead to people getting into debt. Like, this is an eventuality of this because, I mean, shiny aluminium things cost a lot of money, right? So, like, how do you think the Apple brand will take basically being the sort of gateway drug into debt for kind of many people kind of carrying this card around?
I mean, probably just fine. We're actually kind of seeing it a little bit outside of Apple, but with Klarna's entry to the US, because they've gone on a big marketing campaign with using influencers and trying to get young people of any kind of shape and form into using something that is effectively interest-free payments, but then can give you a really big interest rate if you don't make the payment, without much forethought into who are they actually targeting. Because if you choose an influencer, you've got no control over that audience, and there could be a lot of people in there who aren't very fiscally responsible or who are vulnerable that are receiving this information and then thinking, oh great, a new product I can use. And when you get big companies that don't always understand how to appropriately market to vulnerable communities, that can be an issue.
I agree.
As the German here on the team, I might say then that I don't see the Apple Card really coming into Germany, because first of all, it's not a credit card market. The credit card, not just this deferred debit card, but the credit card, and because the APR is capped in Germany, so you cannot go out and ask for 24 or 35% APR. So it's roughly between 12%, which is the highest feasible amount you can charge to a customer. Yeah. So, and that is where the whole business case wouldn't work then anymore. Yeah. So
it's going to be interesting, you know, in a similar way that Apple Pay struggled with certain geographies in terms of the fees and the pushback from, you know, various different banks. You know, it's going to be interesting to see whether Apple and Goldman Sachs take this in a partnership to other geos as well.
I think they have thought on how the repayment piece as well, and that they've made a lot of marketing about saying, oh, we're going to help people repay easier. But
debt management and things.
But it goes back to your point, Emily, that actually that doesn't really matter if they have to send debt collectors after even 100 people, then that's their branding and not a very nice place.
It's kind of like a new level of fintech disruption. Now we've kind of disrupted the traditional layers of banking and all of the tech behind it. And now when we're thinking about how to get over that early adopter hill and into mass consumption and using traditional forms of marketing and new forms of marketing, should financial products be used in that way?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I think it's a great stroke from Goldman Sachs' perspective, you know, essentially being in a situation where they use their balance sheet to enter into a market that actually they can afford to disrupt the business model of everybody else in that space. I wonder if we'll start to see people like BlackRock kind of maybe take this playbook and go, do you know what, we've got a lot of money, we can afford to go into another industry and spoil it for other people, but make a bunch of money for ourselves as well.
I mean, Marcus is an amazing execution of using a balance sheet. I mean, it's as simple as that. Take your time, find money, get money that you can lend, and then lend it effectively without ever having to have a checking account. And all the stress of it, it's incredible, really.
Yeah, it turns out it's really easy when you've got loads of money, doesn't it? All right, on that note, let's move on to the next story then. So